Let's talk about this now. We welcome in the Republican Congressman Juan Ciscomani from the state of Arizona. Congressman, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. What would you say about this first week and how it's been executed versus what the president said he was going to do?
Well, hi. Thanks for having me on. Listen, the president is delivering results. This is exactly what he talked about. This is what he promised. And he said on day one, this was going to start to happen. And that's exactly what's been happening. Some people are suggesting shock out of these actions. But I got to tell you, this is exactly what he talked about. This is what the American people want. This is why we elected him president. And many of us got elected with the top agenda item of border security as well. So this is what he said he was going to do in the order that he said he was going to do it, which was to target those individuals that are posing a danger to public safety. And he's been targeting, of course, the known gang alliance members of Tren de Aragua from Venezuela or MS-13 from El Salvador. These are the people that are being apprehended and deportation orders and have been convicted of committing crimes. These are the people that he said he was going to go after, and that's exactly what's happening. So promises kept. And
you used the term and the word targeted, which is important. I had a conversation yesterday with President Obama's Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, who was here in the studio with us. We're talking about whether these should be described as kind of raids or something like that. But to the Secretary's point, to your point, a lot of this, and we'll talk about an exception in a moment, but a lot of this does seem to be targeted. Here's what he said.
These targeted enforcement actions, I've directed them myself.
Yeah.
I've told ICE, we need to have targeted enforcement actions. This is not new. For all we know, there were targeted enforcement actions going on last week in Joe Biden's last week in president, but this president is making a much bigger deal out of it. And the reason they are making a big deal out of it is to send a message, frankly.
You agree with that, that they're making a bigger deal out of it than it, maybe really is, to send a message? I know messaging is important in all of this, too. What would you say?
Well, this hasn't been done at all. He's talking about something that maybe was done back in the Obama years, but this hadn't been done in the last 4 years. So it is a big deal. It's a big deal because this wasn't being executed by any stretch of the imagination. This wasn't happening at all. Quite the opposite. The border was wide open, and these people were getting in without any kind of repercussion. So the fact that these targeted operations are happening, people are being apprehended, and they're going through the process of deportation is a big deal. And this is exactly what the country wanted, and that's why that's happening. And that was one of the president's top priorities. We want to see more of this, and there's a long list, estimated of about 1.5 million people that have deportation orders that they have to move through this process. So the quicker we get through this process, it's going to be better and for our public safety. So I support the president in this, and I'm glad that the country is finding out what big of a deal this is.
Okay, and now the question then becomes, you said, you mentioned it already, starting with kind of the worst of the worst, and then how do you expand from there? Do you expand from there? Are there mistakes going to be made along the way? This is from our NewsNation station here in the New York area, Pix 11, talking about ICE agents in New Jersey raiding a seafood store and, they say, detaining a U.S. military veteran in the process. The store owner told the Pix 11 News that a U.S. military veteran was among those detained. Here's the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, Ras Baraka.
The problem with it is that ICE went in there without a warrant. And we can disagree on politics. You can disagree with me about the role immigrants play in the economy of our community. But what we must agree on is that the thing that separates this country from many other countries around the world is the Constitution of the United States.
All right. So, Congressman, what would you say about an issue, a situation like that?
Well, I don't have the details on what happened in that specific case, but I can tell you that the intent of ICE in this case and of Tom Homan, who I've talked to directly on this, is to go after these really bad actors. And that's exactly who they're targeting. And that is the vast majority that we're seeing right now in terms of action. So I think they have their priorities right, their priorities straight. People are going to try to politicize this and say that they're not, perhaps what the mayor here is doing and trying to do. They're going to pinpoint the different examples and try to make something out of not a lot going on there. But what we have to focus on is look at the success that this administration has already had in 1 week, more than what years of the Biden administration was able to do. The messaging alone is key here to letting people know around the world that the border is not open anymore.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.